Hello, everyone. It's been a while, huh? I say that, and we've only been away for like a week. It feels good to be back. And oh my god, back we are. What a intense week it has been. And we're gonna go in for a long session today. I think we have 20 people that we need to look at today. So y'all better strap in because it's gonna be a long one. Hello, Pewdie. Hello, Marius. Hello, Victoria, Sheila, Justine. Justine? Sorry. I'm already flunking it. Oh my god. I'm rusty. And hello, Lily. Good to see you all. Hope you're all doing well. Let me switch on my camera as well. We'll see how long it lasts this time. Hello. We are back. What a crazy day. We have all the emails have just gone out for like all the team challenges. So yeah, I think an hour ago or something like that, right? I've been busy prepping for Wednesday, but yeah, next team challenge is off to a start, I would say. Should we spoil anything? I'm probably gonna keep a lot of the information to the kickoff, you know, to kind of keep it like somewhat secretive. But yeah, it has been an intense week. I'll give you one thing. I'll give you an insight on how busy it has been, right? So we've done, I think this is team challenge like 14 or 15, right? So I should have gotten into a groove by now. But it only dawned on me this morning that the signups actually closed. So I was totally unaware that we needed to assemble and send out the emails and all that kind of stuff like yesterday. Whoops. Yeah, so fuck's sake. That's how busy I've been. It just completely passed me by. 100%. So when someone mentioned like, hey, when are we expecting an email this morning? I was like, oh my god, I thought it was Thursday. Shit. So yeah. But hey, we got it done in the end. Just a little insight on the back end of it. Yeah, it's gonna be exciting. I think. What do I want to say about it already? Well, first of all, I'm really excited to see all the people getting onto like the team challenges. Also, I will say like another thing. I'm really excited. I have also been sharing the team challenges with some people that I've worked with, and it's not something that I've ever done like actively, but they were all just astounded by the results of the team challenge. I mean, for me, I have them on the wall, right? So I see them on a day-to-day basis. For someone who has no concept of what this is, right? If I tell it to them, they're like, "Oh, okay, let me know more." And then I just send them like the page with like all the results of the team challenge. They are just like, yeah, flabbergasted. They don't even know what to say because the quality bar of like all the team challenges is so high. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there as well. But yeah, I hope that everyone is doing well. It's good to see you here, Galazar and Top G. Marius is saying, I got in. I am super hyped and nervous for my first one. Don't be nervous. You're in good hands. We have a... Oh, that's one thing that I'll say, because I was going to tease something, right? So we roughly have twice the amount of mentors this time. Last time, I had a lot of time on my hands, right? Because I was in transition between like jobs and all that kind of stuff. So I did a lot of mentoring. Now we added double the mentors compared to last team. So we have way more mentors, way more people actually taking care of like all the teams. And it's a really beautiful mix of people. Some of the judges are also going to be returning as well. So they're going to be, I think most of them are going to be returning. So that's going to be interesting to see as well, to see how it compares to the previous experience. But yeah, what has everyone else been up to? What have y'all been up to? I'm curious to hear. Everyone hard on the grind, hard working on like your personal project. let me know. But yeah, what is happening in the meantime? So last week there was no streams because it was just like way too busy, way too chaotic. Taking. Oh my god. Just basically taking care of like a bunch of like boring business stuff. That was the majority of it, right? And then all the team challenge stuff that came on top of it. I'm doing a couple of mentorships. I'm helping out like a couple of students at like a uni in Salzburg as well. So there's like a whole bunch of things happening. And then still doing the full-time job, of course. So that on top of it. So yeah, it has been interesting. Chaotic, but interesting. Yeah, hopefully with the team challenge, it's always the beginning, the ramp up that is the most intense, right? And there's still more to be done with the kickoff. I need to prep the presentation and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully after that, it will die down a little bit. And then we have time to kind of just like focus on the team challenges and help the teams make their cool stuff. But yeah, we're still working really hard on the course, right? So like all the different lessons, we're still making like a bunch of beautiful content for the academy courses that we're building. Making some really good progress in the middle of everything else. So yeah, you can imagine that it's chaotic. Jay's making bricks, so many bricks. Hey, that's awesome, Jay. I hope you're having fun sculpting some bricks. Or if you're not sculpting, making a tile board or something. Always cool. Hello, Cameron. Good to see you here, buddy. How are you doing? Posted last week my diorama. Now a bit of rest from personal work. Yes. Oh yeah. So I have like a couple of people up on the screen. I'll show you in a bit. That I was gonna show off on stream because we have had some beautiful work that's being posted. So we're gonna go through that as well. Looking forward to the challenge, says Cameron. Yeah, me too, bud. Me too. I'm looking forward to it. Let's do that now. So let's have a look at what has been posted from our community. So hopefully this is the right screen. There we go. Starting out with your work, Sheila. Really beautiful. Let me add a creative reaction here. These reactions, they still feel like so weird. But yeah, beautiful work, Sheila. It was lovely to see you work on this, making improvements. Yeah, really cool to see you like doing the mentorships as well with Jared. You can kind of tell, right? In like the best way possible, right? But it's a good person to learn from when it comes to foliage and all that kind of stuff. So beautiful job. Love it. Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, no worries. No worries. Pewdie is asking, is there an estimated time for the courses to release? That's always been a tricky one. Because it's just the two of us working on it together with like a bunch of teachers that are helping us like build the actual content, right? So it feels like it keeps shifting constantly. There's still my ambition to, after the team challenges now, that's something that I didn't really factor in. After the team challenges, I want to go into early access, and then we're gonna invite like a group of people to do early access testing. I will share the broader timeline though. So in a couple of months, and I'm going to keep this pretty loose, right? But around June, July, that's when a bunch of my time will basically free up. What I want to do at that point is I want to turn those courses that we're building as a foundation to do like group classes. That is sort of like what we're building towards now. That is what I have in mind, and using those courses to then do guided courses with, right? Like with me as a teacher, taking you from beginning to end and making an environment together. That is the idea. But an actual dedicated timeline, it's hard to pin it down because it will depend a lot on how good or how much improvement we need to do based on the feedback that we're going to get from like our initial bunch of people that we're going to invite, right? I think that the content myself, I think that the content is really good, really valuable, but I'm biased, right? Because I've made it, like I've built it together. I'm trying to be like super critical, but the really critical part is going to be when we invite like a bunch of people and then get hands on with it. And then a period of improvement follows until it is good enough to put out there for the world and then start using it. So that is the rough timeline. Again, somewhere around May will be the early access release, right? Then yeah, June, July, somewhere around that timeline, we are probably gonna jump into like a 1.0 release or something like that. Who will be the initial guinea pigs? Who is getting involved? We don't know yet. I do have the idea that it's going to be a mix of people. So, because we don't only want people from the community, right? So I want to invite a couple of my friends as well, like peers in the industry, so that they can get like a high level view on the content, right? And they'll be more like, you know, like figuring out like all the specific details. Whereas someone is going to come in at the ground floor, let's say like a student, depending on what skills that you bring to the table, is going to be more direct on the ground like feedback, right? So we want to have a mix of people. That's what it comes down to. Because ideally, the course should be setting the basis for being a self-taught artist, right? So we're going to invite like a mix of people. There will probably be like an invitation sent out to, or like a sign up for people in the community as well. And then we will probably pick a bunch of people from the community too, and then sample other people as well to add more views into the mix. But yeah, there's no dedicated list for it just yet. Yeah, thank you so much for asking the questions. Jay is currently doing a study based on an old GDC talk by Machine Games on their approach to destruction. Ooh, okay. Cool. That's interesting. Let's continue with this because we got the beautiful work of Sheila. Sheila has done an amazing job. We have some other cool stuff here as well. Huan has finished their project on making this really cool Last of Us inspired like environment. This is really, really well done. I gotta say, we've been following the progress of this during Whip Wednesday, right? And it's been really interesting seeing all this come together. And I was honestly surprised with how thoughtful the approach was of Juan, and like how quick they were to like pick up the feedback that I gave, and then really putting in the work, really putting in the time to make it better, right? So like really, really, really well done. Amazing to see this. Nice little breakdowns as well. That always helps. Really nicely optimized. So yeah, great stuff there. And nicely presented, right? Like nice and clean. I like it. So yeah, really, really cool stuff. So amazing job of publishing this project. So yeah, really, really well done. I think we skipped over Sadvik. Sadvik posted this Walkman as well. Sadvik, you also posted this in like Whip Wednesday, but we're probably going to skip that for this session because we have a lot of other people to get through. And you already posted it anyway, right? So we're just going to keep it at that. Oh, that's interesting. This screenshot here, I know that you realized that there was like a low resolution texture in the background and you were going to fix that for the final post, but you didn't? Rickrolling on our station is something new. Rickrolling? Oh shit, did I just get rickrolled? I didn't even notice. But yeah, really, really well done. Really cool to see this. Yeah. Really cool stuff. I like the animation as well. So yeah, that's another great post. Let me actually share some of these pieces, right? So the first one that we added, that we looked at, was the one from Sheila. Then the second one we talked about was from Huan. So that's the second one. Then we have Sadvik. And then we have Chatneil. So sorry for spamming a bunch of links to the chat, but if you want to check them out yourself, give them a follow, give them a like, all that good stuff. Help the algorithm. But yeah, let's see. Pretty cool stuff here from Janelle. A couple of pointers like watch out with the exposure, right? Like this is like overly lit. So watch out when you're doing lighting, especially in like really light metal materials. Watch out with how overexposed the values get. Same thing here, right? Something to watch out for. Oh, wireframe. Okay. Yeah. But cool stuff. So those were like a couple of things that got posted from the community, which is really, really cool. Love to see it. Hello, 3D Ben. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Hello, Snowbat. Mike, you're saying, I volunteer. I'm already a self-taught artist. Yeah, we will definitely be sending out applications or like a form that people can fill out so that that people can apply as well. Because we will be looking for people to test out and give feedback and like really scrutinize what we've been building for like the last year and a half. So yeah, we will let you know. There will be an announcement on that soon. But yeah, so keep your eyes open. Right. What else has been going on? Apart from all the bad news again, right? It feels so freaking annoying to have to keep talking about this, but like the freaking massive layoffs at like Epic Games, like 1,000, well, over 1,000 people have been let go. We're not going to dwell on this too much. I just wanted to say that I hope that all those talented people find like a good place. They deserve it. So I hope that they find a good place somewhere else. Yeah. And this I always hesitate to make this point, but I hope that people will start looking into some additional ways to self-sustain. Or I don't know, that they open their eyes to what an actual employment means. This sounds so negative, right? But I think it's good to have like a really open mind about this and really know what you're getting into. And this is not only games, right? I think this is just like the state of any industry that you go into. Yeah, so you really try to take a step back and try to build something for yourself that at least gives you the peace of mind and gives you the flexibility in the case that there is something happening there, or that you feel that something is coming, you know? Why is there so many layoffs in this field? Well, there's a bunch of reasons to it, right? Like I think the biggest reason that a lot of people point to is that we had a bunch of money come into games when it was COVID. A lot of people used that money to really expand their operations and to make more games and all that kind of stuff. But that came with the downside that you also need to manage a bunch of people, right? And everyone was like remote. And you see that the games that are coming out together with some of the weird moves that like publishers are doing, where, for example, the whole push for like more live service games, no matter what, like that needs to happen. You can kind of see the downsides, right? And then if something doesn't work in business, yeah, there's gonna be consequences to that, right? So that was a big thing, like a bunch of money coming in, really massive investments into like making more stuff and hoping that it would work out. Even though most of it was really focused on something that has like a low likelihood of really working out, especially if you don't give it a proper support, right? I mean, look at what just happened, right? With Epic Games, they just let a bunch of people go from Fortnite, which is supposed to be like the banner of a good live service game, right? So yeah, I think there's a lot of companies that are now trying to make like a forever game, right? And I think Fortnite was supposed to be that, but Fortnite can't be that. I don't think the concept of a forever game exists, you know, because people will over time like move on to the next thing, and I think that has a knock-on effect, right? But yeah. What is cool though, and this is what I've been saying for like years and years and years now, right? Is that with all these layoffs, it is really interesting to see. I mean, you can't really see it, right? Because you don't see people just leave a building and then like immediately go and start their own thing or like join a smaller company or something like that. But I know from like a bunch of my peers, or like they know people that have been laid off, take a little bit of a break, reorient themselves, and then join something smaller where they can be more hands-on and more ambitious and have more ownership, right? Again, not saying that that is going to be the key to success for everyone, right? But I personally feel that that is always like a more interesting path to take, especially once you've built up a lot of experience, right? Hey, Rassam. Hey, Leia. Talking about the epic layoffs? Yeah, just a little bit. Just a little bit. I think I kind of just wanted to say like a couple of things about it. Because it is annoying news, right? It is not great. And me saying that I hope that those people, well, first of all, I do hope that those people like find another job and find like a place where they can really, really belong. But there's always a counterpoint that I feel that if you, I don't know, I'm so independently minded that it feels like if you want to really do, man, I'm struggling with words today. If you really want to belong somewhere, I think you have to build that for yourself. I feel like if you want to have that sense of ownership, I think you need to grab it with both hands and build it for yourself. And that obviously is not going to be feasible for a lot of people, right? But yeah, scared to see so many layoffs before you start your first job. Yeah, but here's also the thing, right? It seems to be really, really regional, right? Where, and there's a huge shift happening right now where, let's say if you join like a smaller company, that company probably has all this in mind, right? They try to be a little bit more self-sustaining. They try to have like multiple clients that they work with, maybe to do like a little bit of outsource on the side or whatever, right? Whereas like with a big company, if they see like a drop in revenue coming from like the one game that they make, Fortnite in this case, the only way that they can do something about that in the immediate term is just by letting people go, right? Or, you know, digging into their own pockets, which could also be an option, but that's not sustainable in the really long term, right? So yeah. But what I wanted to say there is that don't let whatever happens externally like really scare you, or like, I don't know, drive any sort of sense of insecurity or something like that when you get your first job, right? There's still a lot of openings in this industry. I feel that there's going to be more and more openings in the near future, but I feel like it's sort of shifting from like the places where I would, for example, apply, right? So it's going to look different. But games are not going to go anywhere. They're not. They're loved by so many people. They're loved by so many people that want to work on games, right? So it's not going to go there. It's not going to go anywhere. I wouldn't be worried about it at all. But it's good to keep your eyes open, right? And be a little bit of aware of what's happening. But don't let it feed into your anxiety, I would say. Because like you said, before you start your first job, there's still other people that I know that have gotten their first job recently. What scares me more are the negative tweets around it. The don't join the industry, and there's not even 1,000 jobs for all of those who got laid off. Yeah, I don't like that fear-mongering either. Because the way that I always think about it, right? And I try to always think through this lens, even when I'm giving feedback, right? Is whenever you say something that is directly trying to influence the people that do want to go in this industry, and let's say you have an effect on them and they don't join for whatever reason, I feel like that is a projection of yourself onto that person, which is never something that I want to do, right? I know that sometimes, for example, I can be like pretty cynical, right? And I can be, let's I put myself on the spectrum of realistic with like some sort of a negative, potentially positive kind of spin, right? But like I try to be like somewhat in the middle. I don't think being really overly positive about something where it's like, oh, nothing's happening. Yeah, join the industry. Nothing's happening. No, just ignore it. That's not productive. But I think the counterpoint is also not productive. Because what if, and this is what I always imagine, what if working in games is the absolute best thing that you've ever done in your life, but someone told you to not do it, right? I don't want to take that away from people because I think that is way more scarier to me than anything else. I've had a couple of people like in my family, my friend group, well, potentially more my family, where they would talk about regret in that sort of way, right? And the regret is usually comes from the things that you haven't tried. Because honestly, like if you try something and it doesn't work out, then at least you tried, right? You tried, you give it your best shot, and then if it's not for you, you can still decide, you can still pivot, you can do whatever you want, right? But I think the worst case scenario is where you don't try because someone else told you. That is the thing that I'm trying to avoid at all costs. Because again, that's not productive, you know? And there's one thing that I really, really like. So I talk about Gamescom a lot, right? I really like engaging with like students or like juniors that are trying to make it into the industry or are getting into the industry, right? Oh my god, the passion, the drive, the unrelentless nature of just like, I'm still gonna do it no matter what. It is so cool to see. It is so inspiring. Like it even puts like a fire under my ass too, you know? Like not gonna lie about it. To be honest, I've given up the thought of ever getting involved in games, but I'll keep improving and making my games, and I hope I land there eventually. Well, we'll see, right? Like that is also a way of. Well, you say like you're making your own games to get employed in games, but if you make your own game and you release it, then you're self-employed in games, right? So technically, that's also a way of making it. It is just by different metrics, right? And I think there's something there that is it is infinitely more hard to do, right? Like from the get-go. Like there's no denying that. Like making a game by yourself without any prior knowledge. But the main reason why I went into the industry is because I wanted to gather that knowledge working in a professional field and then do my own games, right? But that was my road. That doesn't mean that it's your road to walk, right? But I think those metrics are changing. That's what I wanted to say. Like, you don't need someone else's approval to then make a game because there's such a thriving like indie market of like solo developers that have made games that you can make that too. And I think BE Studio coming soon. We've already tried it actually. We have a project that we made with BE Studios. But yeah, that was more like an asset pack kind of thing. Just to be realistic, I think, not overly negative or toxicity positive, it's also a skill to work out whose opinion to listen to on things. The general internet's opinion is usually not a good one. God, yeah. I mean, that's a good point, right? Like, who do you listen to? I think that's where again it comes down to again, if you are like unrelentlessly positive about something, I find it really, I distrust that opinion, right? Same thing with like someone who's like really, really negative, right? So to your point, like anything on the edges, I usually don't trust as a baseline. And if you come in and you say like, hey, I've worked in this industry for 10 years. I hate this, and that, but I love this, and that, right? That is an opinion that I'll listen to because I know there's nuance to it, you know? And that's someone that I'll trust because they they self-selected the good and the bad and then gave me like the whole thing, right? Rather than just being like, oh my god, I fucking hate it, you know, like, ugh. Because that sometimes gets too emotional, and that's not really something that you can rely on. Darson is saying, oh, I didn't know that. Oh yeah, it's been, oh god, it's been like a couple of years now, but me and my friend, we got together, then invited like 10 people from BE to do like an asset pack, and then we sold it on the Unreal Engine marketplace to just see what the potential was and to build like a pipeline to make like our own assets. But the business side around it was a bit too complex. Because ideally, what I would love to do, and this might work if you really focus on it and you make it your thing, you could set up a business. You could say like, hey, look, we're gonna get together. We're gonna make an asset pack. This amount of money is gonna come into the company's name first, and then anything after that, that is shared between everyone, right? That is the idea that I had, but we never got to the point where it made enough money to actually kick that off the ground. Plus, something that I realized during that project is that I don't want to make asset packs. I really don't. There is money in it for sure, but that's not where I want to get the money from. Like, I don't really care about that at all, right? I want to make worlds. I don't care about like individual assets. I want to make worlds. That's what I want to do. Are you still planning on creating your own game? It is very much in the plan. But oh my god. That will be at a certain point. What I am doing right now, and this might be like a future topic for like Friday streams or something like that, is I am trying games that are in the genre that I want to build something in to see what they're doing well and what they're not doing well. And then seeing like, okay, can we get something from that? At this stage in my career, I like to learn and earn making asset packs. I mean, making your own asset pack is not really that difficult, right? I would honestly start like really small, sell it for like a couple of quid, and then see what the market says, right? Because sometimes that is the most effective way of just getting something, and you can do that, right? When I started selling my first asset pack, I basically was a student. Basically, right? I think I was like 6 months in or like a year into my career or something like that as a professional, right? You can't sell your assets you made for your portfolio? Yep. Exactly. Just don't make another extraction shooter, please. No, I have no interest in extraction shooters, so that won't be an issue at all. I do have to say, I really like following the story or like the evolution that's happening with Marathon. But I don't really care about like the whole extraction shooter like gameplay design. That's not something that's really interesting for me. There were a couple of other questions though. So what are your thoughts on jobs becoming non-remote? And do you think it can also serve as a factor in difficulty in getting a job because you can't move or you're in the same city as a studio? Well, that is basically the reality the way that it was before COVID, right? So we have just gone back to the way that it was before COVID. I am used to that reality. I have moved country 4 times for the job. So yeah. This is a weird one, right? So right now, I am working fully remote, right? I'm basically working freelance. I'm working for a company. I've been doing that for a while now. If I had the choice, well, how should I word this? Because I do have a choice. But like, if the situation around the job was more favorable, and I'm talking about like external factors, right? Because I was living in the UK before, you had to have a visa. The rental market is like pretty shit. Like trying to find a job for my partner was really difficult. Like all those external things, if they weren't an issue, I would still be in-house in the studio today because I love working with a team. I love being surrounded by a team. I love having the banter. I love discussing things. I love that. Belgium tax is no joke too. It's not that bad. It looks bad from the outside, right? But there are potentially more ways that you can finesse with your business account. I think, and also like Belgium wages are like pretty high compared to, well, from the ones that I know at least. They seem to be higher comparable to other regions. So it's interesting because yes, taxes from the outside look horrendous in Belgium, but there's a whole bunch of caveats to that system as well. And if we look, okay, I'm not going to go off that cliff, but if you look at the whole economic system, there's a bunch of benefits of actually working in Belgium and then making use of investments and all that kind of stuff that is like way more favorable in Belgium than somewhere else. But again, that's a can of worms to go into. Generic Man has been waiting for the live stream for days now. Oh, sorry, Generic Man. I'm happy to have you back. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the wait. Yeah, last week was crazy. This week is still crazy, but maybe a little bit less crazy. Did we even talk about the question that you asked there, Darson? Because do you think it can also serve as a factor in difficulty in getting a job because you can't move? Yes. So to talk about that, that is definitely a factor, right? Because if a company needs to sponsor you to move abroad, they definitely factor that into the whole calculation. Now, does that mean that you can't get a position at a studio that works in a different country? No. But there are going to be things that you have to keep in mind, right? Depending on where you live, this is actually the benefit of having a bachelor, right? Because it opens some doors where, like, if you don't have a bachelor, you need to have a lot of industry experience before it unlocks the same perks as a bachelor, right? Yeah. Oh, Charlie, yes. You know what's interesting? So I worked in the UK before Brexit. And then obviously like a couple of years ago I went back like after Brexit and all that kind of stuff. I think if Brexit hadn't gone through, we would still be living in the UK. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure we would still be living in the UK. Even with like all the external circumstances going on, right? Probably still be living there. I'm not sure how this is in Europe. Oh, sorry. Before we can dive into that question. Thanks for asking the questions. We'll get through the chat and we'll have a look at everything. But I'm not sure how this is in Europe, but it's almost became non-existent in North America for all levels because some studios get government funding. Well, so yeah, if you look at the statistics of the regions that are most heavily affected by the layoffs, North America, or like I think America in general, got fucking decimated, right? I think 70% of the layoffs that happened in the last 5 years have happened in North America because it has become so expensive to make games there, right? So yeah. And that's why you even see in America like a lot of companies moving away from California, right? They go to like cheaper regions where they can have bigger margins because they don't have to pay their people so much, and it becomes cheaper to live. So, but that's what I mean. Like this is like a global thing that has ramifications and benefits for different countries, depending on where you are, right? I would still wear a chain vest to walk outside the UK. Nah, the UK is fine. Also, the UK lost over 1,000 with just over a year. What do you mean? 1,000 what? Apples? Pears? Airplanes? What are we talking about? Let's see. A couple of other questions. So I am from South Africa with little to no industry and unemployment of 30%. Exhausting options, but still going at it. As I know my skill grows, my chances grow too. Yep. My like a friend that I work with, like a friend of mine, and also my lead currently. He's also from South Africa, so I know how dire the situation might be. I mean, I only know um, the surface level of it, right? But that's enough to make me feel happy that I have access to the entirety of Europe. Ba-da-ba-bum. Charlie is asking, I don't know if if you discussed this already, but do you have any thoughts on Highguard? Not really, honestly. Because I haven't played the game, right? And I think it is just from reading all the comments and the conversation around Highguard, the sense that I get is that it was an overconfident team with a bad marketing plan. And then they got handed the golden opportunity, didn't know how to capitalize on it properly, and that cost them their game and their studio. That is really, really simplifying things, right? But that's what I feel about it. But even just boiling it down to like that single sentence that I just said is not doing it justice. There's so much complexity to the whole thing. Because if you just look at like getting the main spot on, you know, such a high viewership, the high viewership that the Game Awards has, that is a golden ticket. So even with a marketing plan and with the idea of like shadow dropping the game and all that kind of stuff, even with all that in mind, I would also still be tempted to get that. Mm-hmm. Mr. Slow is asking, any suggestion for people who can't land a job in this industry and getting too old, no connections to other artists, can't even get any gig? That's interesting. I would definitely say that a part of the answer lies in the question, right? So no connections to other artists, try to make connections. I think that is definitely, if you're not doing that already, try it. Go into Discord servers, go to local events, travel internationally if you can. I know that sometimes money can be tight, but you can definitely make like a bunch of connections just being around in like Discord servers, and that can really, really help you. That would be a great place to start on the connection side. And if you can't land a job in this industry and you really want to get into this industry, you just have to keep trying. You just have to keep trying. I know a bunch of people that are older, right? That have gotten through mentorships. I've mentored a couple of them myself, and they got into the industry as well. Now, is that going to be difficult? Yes. But is it doable? Yes. I think also what could help is setting yourself like a realistic timeline and really going like all in. Because sometimes a really good deadline can help a lot. The UK lost over 1,000 people in the industry over a year. Yeah. I mean, you got a lot of it might actually have to do with like visas and how that links to employment in the games industry in the UK specifically, right? Because if you tend to hire a bunch of people from outside the UK, and it becomes really difficult when the industry takes a tumble like we're in for the last couple of years, even if you have someone who's really skilled, but they have an issue getting employed somewhere else because let's say Ubisoft Leamington shut down, right? Which is the thing that happened. Then a lot of really talented people land on the street, but if they can't go to another studio close by or they can't afford to like relocate to somewhere else, that's how you lose people in the industry, right? So unfortunately, yeah, that's the reality of it. And that's where it is. Well, if you're in the UK, if you're like a UK citizen, that's where you have a benefit, right? Because you have a support system and all that kind of stuff. If you are like myself, if you are on like a skilled worker visa, literally the day that you get fired or you quit or whatever, you get an email from home office saying, hey, you've got 6 weeks. And then You need to go. Was it 6 weeks? I think it was something around that, yeah. I mean, there is a slight delay, right? But that's the thing. There's a lot of pressure. And I think that's what I didn't like about it, right? Because I really enjoyed living and working in the UK, right? From the first time that I joined before Brexit and even after Brexit and all that kind of stuff. I really loved and enjoyed working there. I like the culture. But it is just that pressure of just being like, okay, I had to be honest to myself and just be like, okay, do I want to keep hopping from studio to studio in between projects, or do I just go for the safer option, go back home and try to build something for myself, right? Yeah. Is UK culture that different from Belgium? Yeah, it is. And it is interesting. It is always easy to be salty about that, right? There's a lot of benefits about Belgium as well. Trust me on that one. If you don't want to live in like a mold-infested home, Belgium is the thing. I mean, the house that we rent now, like the house with all bills included, is cheaper than the house that we rented base rent. Do you answer Discord DMs? Yes, but it will take a while. I do go through them. The fries is a big deal breaker. I don't know if I'm gonna get my citizenship revoked. I don't really care about fries. You know? I don't really care about fries at all. Let's see. It seems the barrier for entry for juniors is so high. When I look at the works that are the supposed junior artists, they always look so good. What does it take for a junior to actually get a job? Well, there's a bunch of things there, right? But I would say do not ever compare yourself to another junior that might have really cool work on ArtStation. I think that's the first thing to already avoid. Do not compare yourself to them because you don't know what their situation is like. I'll give you an example, right? You might have like an amazing, talented artist, right? Also a junior, also trying to get a job in the games industry, right? But they can't relocate for whatever reason. And in your head, you think that you're competing with this person, but they can only find a job locally, right? That's a real thing. So it's like, why you shouldn't even let that get into your head, because it might not even factor in, right? And that's easier said than done. But like comparison can really kill your motivation to do stuff. So I would really watch out with that. What's your thoughts on the new DLSS 5 introduced by Nvidia? Can I just like? I never thought I was gonna be the person who was gonna be asked. Hey, what are your thoughts on this? But I guess here we are. Yeah, what are my thoughts on it? God, it is hard to not only be reductive about it, right? I think it was something that Nvidia just pushed out without reading the market again. But it's like, I don't know, it's a $5 trillion company, so they probably don't even care about the market at this point, right? We're not gonna go too deep, Leia. I'm not gonna get sucked in by this rabbit hole, but I think the main reason that I realize when I see any sort of AI stuff and all the fear and doubt and all that kind of stuff that goes with it is the main thing that I always go back to is that art direction is going to be really important. That's always the thing that I go back to. In my head, that's what I think. Because I think those Snapchat filters or whatever you want to do, right? Like I think they're really good at making something look really average. And if like gamers want like a really average game, there's probably going to be a bunch of them in the future if we're not careful, right? But what that also does is if you have a bunch of the same looking games that serve you the same looking thing, that is not what games are, right? That is not what we want to see. That is not what we want to play. That's not who we see ourselves like immersed in a game, right? Yeah. So yeah, we will see. We will see where it goes. Yeah. How important is it to have RGB masking in your environment breakdown? Is it more about the why or the how? So I think it could be good to kind of show it off, and just to showcase that you know how to use it, right? So yeah. Hey, Dominic. Hold up, just tuned in. You're living in Belgium again? Yes, I am. We moved 4 months ago. So we ended up moving during Christmas, actually, which was a great time to be moving. But yeah, I am in Belgium again. And I hope you're doing well too, buddy. I don't know. Are you in Belgium? Where do you live now? I mean, you don't have to dox yourself on like this chat, but I moved back over a little over a year ago as well. Oh, nice. Okay. Awesome. Back in the city we met. Nice. Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, interesting. Like, I do want to get more involved with like Belgium games industry, right? I think I've gotten to the point where I've had my taste of like all the other companies and like the work there. I think it is time to really dive in and like, I don't know. I get the feeling that I was hesitant at the beginning, but I feel that it becomes time to, okay, if it's so hard to do it anywhere else, I might as well do it on my own terms, within the comfort zone, right? But yeah. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're still getting settled in. We're still exploring stuff, you know, but yeah. So we'll see how it goes in the long term. Beauty is asking, how was BE first days and streams? We have a lot of people now, but how did it look before? Just curious. How was my first stream? Oh my god. I've been doing this for years now. To be fair, it's been years on and off, right? So the iteration that we're seeing now with Wednesday is not the iteration that it started with, right? And I think the way that I started out was, oh my god, how did I start out? It might have been, it's one of two things. It might have been AMA, right? Where I had the idea, like every Sunday, I'm going to do an AMA with the community, right? And it was just literally me doing the same thing that I'm doing now, just talking to you, and you could ask me questions beforehand, and I would do like a little bit of prep and all that kind of stuff. Or it was me live streaming and like working on my scene. I think it might have been one of the two. But I don't really feel like a lot has changed, you know? Sure, we have like 40 viewers instead of like the occasional one that just drops in, but I don't really notice that much of a difference apart from like a more active chat and more questions. Hey, Chrissy, good to see ya. Good to see ya. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for popping in as well. Let's see if we can get some more questions, and then we'll dive into some feedback, because we do have to get through like a lot of people, and I've been yapping for an hour already. Dominic is still hesitant. To be honest, I came back for the quality of life. I agree with your take in the industry. Yeah, I think that's the point that I'm hesitant about too. Like in general, there's still this sort of hesitancy, but I think the more that I start thinking about it, it is more like, okay, we can keep moving around. Well, this is the way that I thought about it, right? Like me and my partner, we can keep moving around, we can keep moving for the job, but it feels like over time the job has just become more and more unstable, and especially when the majority of jobs are in the UK, which again, I really love living there. It's just The freaking visa stuff, man. And then if you want to get citizenship, right, you have to be there 5 years. That doesn't, well, 5 years now. They're thinking about like upping that to 10 years. Can you imagine trying to survive like the industry, the games industry hassle for like 10 years with like me being the main visa holder, which means that if I lose my job in the UK, which I work in the games industry, you know, that also means that my partner is out of a job too. Right? I mean, you have 60 days or whatever to like make good on that, right? Or like try to find another job. But oh my god, that's so difficult. And if you can't, it's just both out, right? And if I think about like, okay, I run Beyond Extent, right? So I run the business, I set up my business in the UK, and I really was intent of like making that the main thing. But it was just at the end, I really started thinking about it and just like, is it worth it, right? I don't know. We've got a permanent right to go back to the UK, but I completely agree. This is probably one thing that we, in hindsight is 2020. That's one thing that we should have done. We should have applied for, I don't know what that's called, like the right to remain, so that we could always come back, right? When Brexit was announced, we should have done that. But hey, we know. We know now. But yeah. I wish Belgium games industry was bigger, but I feel hopeful it will expand. I've been looking at a lot of stuff, and it seems to be heavily affected by ups and downs, right? But also from like an outsider looking in. I don't know how to explain this. Well, I kind of do, but it's probably going to be harsh. I think what, in general, the Belgian games industry would probably need is an outside look into how things are done in proper game studios. Because I feel there's a majority of game studios in Belgium that have not really gotten that experience of working in like a proper production, right? Which means that they might figure out like how to run a proper studio over the long time, right? But to me, getting into the games industry first, then getting to really see how it works in a production pipeline and what you need to do, and then bringing that knowledge back to Belgium was always my view on things, if that was the future for myself, right? Not saying that makes like the economic landscape like any easier, because it is fucking tricky to like set up like a game studio with the economic landscape that we have in Belgium. But I think you want to give yourself like the most opportunities, right? And I think for me that was going into the games industry, seeing how it works internally, and then taking that knowledge back. And I see that Dominic agrees. So but yeah, a lot of indie small ones for sure that I noticed. Yeah. And there were actually like a couple like double A studios that were like growing continuously, and then they got like freaking hit with the hammer, like when all the investment dried up, you know? So yeah, I think we just need to be, I don't know, should I call it like more ambitious, more ruthless, more savvy? I think savvy is probably the best way of saying it, you know? But yeah, we'll see. There are some interesting initiatives, though. There are some interesting initiatives. So I think in the long run, it could be interesting. And to be fair, I think, again, from the outside looking in, I think we have Larian to like really thank for that, right? Because they really put like AAA games made in Belgium like on the market, and I think that opened a lot of eyes in different places that were not even paying attention to games before. So yeah, so that was interesting too. We'll see when that goes in the long run, though. But I'm curious. I'm curious. Is it easier to work as a freelancer in general in this industry? Like because of a lot of work, people work remote from all over the world. That is a good question, Chrissy. I'm just getting into like the freelance work myself. If I have to give a view on environment art specifically, then I don't think it is, because most environment artists, especially juniors, they want you to work like in the studio, right? So you're gonna get hired to work in a studio as like a full-time employee. And I think especially as environment artists, it is pretty tricky to break in as a freelancer. I do know a couple of freelancers that are doing like really kick-ass work, but I think most of them are senior and they know what it is to work in like in a proper production pipeline. I don't know too many that actually work as freelancers and as juniors at the same time. I think you will have to punch far above your weight if you wanna get any freelancer contracts. Again, do keep in mind that my view is primarily focused on AAA and somewhat AA, right? So when it comes to working for like small indie companies, that is something that I'm really new into. I have basically no clue what's happening in that landscape. Not all freelance is the same either. Different roles work differently, and there's freelance with short and long-term contracts. Yeah. That is true as well. And then Leia saying juniors are expected to work in-house. Yeah, I think so. I think also I would love juniors to be in-house. I think that the risk of having a junior work full remote is probably just too risky for companies. Yeah, like Leia says, like the lack of trust, right? I think as a junior especially, yeah, and especially in environment art, you need that support. You need to have people around you that can teach you the ropes and all that kind of stuff. That is going to be trickier when you do it online. Let's see. I don't think we have like any more questions. I think it's time that we dive into some feedback, shall we? So let me switch on over to juniors without supervising in studio is also just pointless for both sides. Juniors need mentoring. It's good for the studio, good for the junior. And I say that as someone who really likes remote. Yeah. Yeah, this is an interesting one, right? Like I like remote from like a personal independence kind of view, right? I'd really like just having more flexibility in my career, and I get to pick, where I want to move or all that kind of stuff, right? But there is like a huge part of me, and I said this before, right, where I really, really miss working with like a dedicated team that you're surrounded by like 8 hours a day. Yeah. So it's always like it's a choice, right? But especially as juniors, God, if I would honestly recommend going into a studio for a couple of reasons, right? I think Dominic said it well. You need to have mentoring. You need to have that support. I will always say that is 100% true. But also the additional thing is connections. There are so many connections that I've built when I was a junior that I still talk to this day, and that I still meet up like every year at Gamescom, and I'll ask how they're doing, and then maybe they'll have like a job, and like it's that those connections from like in person, actual people that you talk to is really difficult to replace with someone who you just talk to online. It is really difficult. And this is also, again, this is coming from a person who's running like a Discord channel where I basically sit like, where I try to sit in like every day and talk to people, right? There is still a difference from where there's a couple of people in the chat right now who I've met in real life. And that bond from just talking for an hour to them is infinitely stronger than it is talking like hundreds of hours online. Leia saying LinkedIn is super important, especially for gaining connections and getting that chain reaction of visibility emotion. People get headhunted through LinkedIn. Yeah. I think what I would and this the landscape, the online landscape is constantly changing, right? So what I would say on like social media in general is that, well, first of all, it keeps shifting. And I think as a new person trying to get a job, I would hedge my bets by posting on all the social media networks. And there's tools for this, right? You can set up your own like little automations. You can grab a tool like Buffer, which is free for 3 social media platforms. We talked about this before. But I would not only put my eggs in like the basket of LinkedIn, I would like post my work everywhere. Everywhere that you can. And build some like online reputation that way. Fully agree. I'm full remote, but I just went back to the UK for a week just for the sake of a bit of FaceTime. Oh yeah, it can do a lot for the team. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, I think I definitely want to do that too. Once we get like close to release, right? I would definitely want to go to the release party and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you just have to. That's like a unique opportunity, right? Like being able to go to a party. Well, if it's still an opportunity at that point, we'll see. But like, I would love to go to a party, to like the release party for something that you worked on for like 5, 6, 7 years or something like that, right? Well, not in my case, but not this time, at least. Mm-hmm. There are not a lot of junior jobs right now. Do you think that will change in the near future? Yes, that will change in the near future. I think there are more and more junior jobs coming up right now. But do you think that will change in the future? Yes. And I think the demographics of where we're going to find jobs is probably going to change. And I think it's going to be less and less in like big AAA studios, right? That usually were like the big attractor of like the massive amount of jobs, right? And I think what I see is them downsizing and outsourcing code studios being the ones where like juniors like really grind their teeth, you know? So yeah, that's like an area that I would keep in mind. Mike says, I've always worked remote since I started working, and honestly, I've always been curious about working in a studio. I started in 2017. Yeah, I mean, in your case, that might actually be an interesting case where if you've never worked in a studio, this is going to sound weird, but that might be the most beneficial position for you to be in. Because you don't know what it is like to work in a studio. Because I think once you experience like having those creative, like off the cuff discussions, and you see people working on like creative shit like next to your desk, and like there's an energy, and I think that energy is really attractive. So maybe there's an upside of not having like an in studio job. I think it's up and downs. I noticed Naughty Dog has been hiring like 10 associate environment artists in the last 10 months. Oh yeah, they might be on the roll again with like crunching, you know, which they said that they wouldn't be doing. Oh boy. Anyway, let's go for some feedback. If you are a member of our community and you want to get seen first, let me know by raising your hand in the chat, and then we'll have a look at your work first. Or else I'm just gonna pick random people and then we'll go from there. Hey Finn, good to see you here, buddy. Glad to see you signed up to the community and also joined the team challenge. That's awesome. All right, we got Charlie first, then Pewdie, then Top G. Why am I reading this? I'm gonna forget. You all know that I'm gonna forget the sequence of this and then I have to scroll up again. So, okay, let's start with Charlie. I don't think I've made like any annotations for you yet. I've not even looked at your post. So let's have a look right now. Hi Tim, new project, exciting. Question, what do you think of the overall composition so far? Anything to keep in mind with this project in terms of things that stick out? Potential issues or things to focus on. So we're mainly, because this was your selection, right? So we're gonna yeet all this. And we're just gonna focus on this guy, which is good. I think in composition, I really like what you have going on already. The only thing that I would say is that it feels, I like what you're doing here with like breaking it up, right? So we have like this empty space here. I want to maybe contextualize that a bit more by also doing the same thing in the foreground, because oh, that's the older one. Okay. Sure. Okay. We'll get the new one in. Let's go. Okay. So you move the pillar. Anyway, so I was saying that right now it feels a little bit weird that we have this fully built out scene in the foreground, and that the background is supposed to be this diorama, right? So I want you to think about the consistency of those two things, where maybe we can also cut out like a little bit of the foreground as well, and make it feel like it's more of a diorama. This would probably need, you will probably need to pull the camera back a little bit, right, to give you like a little bit more space to have like something nice happen with the ground and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I would definitely think about that, so that you can maybe have like the road continue here, and then it does the same thing on this side, right? So that we can kind of have like the road kind of dissolve here. I think that would be cool. But I love the composition overall. I like what it's doing already. And you've got some like really interesting components to work with, right? The focus is going to be on the bridge, and I think there's going to be like some goopy, grimy stuff on the bridge, right? But before we move on, like an opacity mask type thing, you mean? Not necessarily. I'm talking more from like a high level, that if you're going to create like a diorama, right, which is basically like you cut off the edges, you can do that in a multiple ways. So you could do that with doing like a mask, right? Or you can also do that with like meshes. So what you can potentially do is, let's say you have this edge over here, right? It could also be cool to just have like a little bit of an overhang, and then just say like, hey, look, we're gonna sculpt some like rock modules. That can also work, right? It just depends on what you want to do with your scene and what kind of look and feel you want to go for, right? Because one is more graphic, as in like graphical in style, right? And then the other is more like 3D-ish, right? So it kind of depends on what kind of art style you kind of prefer. Yeah, you can do some cool sculpty stuff. Right. Cool. That's number one. Let's see. Was there any other question? Overall composition. Anything to keep in mind with this project in terms of things that stick out and potential issues to focus on? Yeah. So actually extend the ground mesh a bit as well. Yeah, maybe not as far as I did, right? But the main thing to capture here is, I want to see that the diorama extends, because now the straight edge kind of feels like it's the edge of the world, but there's nothing there, you know? And we want to sell the feeling that it still continues, but it is very deliberate in the way that we're doing it. I misspelled that, but we're gonna deal with it. It needs to feel deliberate. That's the main thing here, right? Cool. I would say when it comes to this is very much like feelings based, right? You have this tree here. I think that tree might need to go just for the composition because you have. I like what you're doing here with the tree. Maybe there's like some like foliage like next to it to kind of fill this out a little bit more. And then because you have this pillar here as well, I would then potentially get rid of the tree because otherwise there's too much weight on the left side of the frame, right? And that gives you more space to like cut out. That gives you more space to cut out like the ground mesh as well. Is Beyond Extend Discord free to join? No, it is included with a membership, but you get like a bunch of cool shit, honestly. Even if I say so myself, as a member, you get like a massive PDF of 250 pages with like a bunch of tips and tricks on environment art. And there's a bunch of more stuff. Feel free to check out the website. But yeah, that's my initial thoughts on this project. I would say best of luck on it. I do like how small and compact it is, right? This allows you to really showcase what you're going to do with the bridge, how you're going to make that interesting, and yeah, really focus on like the small pieces, right? Nice to be working on a smaller project. Yes, I can tell. Oh yeah, of course, generic. How could I forget? You get to hang out with Swan. He's like one of our epic members that is a source of inspiration, you know? So the rest of us don't matter. It's only Swan that matters, you know? So you get to hang out with him as well. Right. Thank you, Charlie. It's good to see you back in the groove on a smaller project. Who was next? See, I've already forgotten. Pewdie. Thank you, Tim. No worries, no worries. Pewdie is here. Ooh. AI modified? No! Okay, we're just going to ignore that. Basement office. Okay. Banned him. No. Let's have a look. So this is a private detective's office in the house's basement. I'm looking for feedback on the props and the layout. Could you say that this is an investigator's detective office? If not, what key elements are missing? So currently, something is definitely being investigated, right? That's definitely the feeling that I have because we are seeing, you know, like the whiteboard, and you have like another whiteboard here. There's definitely a sense that it is something being investigated. But I think the context of what is going to be investigated is going to be revealed through the pictures, right? So right now, something is definitely being investigated. And that's good, right? That's kind of where we want to be with a white box. We kind of want to give the idea of the story, right? The story doesn't need to be super fleshed out, but the components need to be there. What key elements are missing to sell the detective narrative? I think you have all the components here, but I think what's really going to make them shine is how you're going to do the set dressing of them, right? As we talked about already. I'm still thinking about how I can populate the shells. What kind of props would you expect to see on the shells in the detective's office? I will say this is a great source to do some reference hunting, right? Look at like old CSI shows, look at like what modern like offices look like. Try to find like images of like the FBI's office that put you on a blacklist somewhere, you know. Try to find those things and get inspired by those. And this, I'm going to say this with a purpose, right? Avoid AI imagery specifically for this, because what you want to do is you want to get close to ground truth as possible, right? You want to get the real deal, because AI is going to spit out like a bunch of random stuff, right? it's going to hallucinate, it's going to do a bunch of random stuff, and it's going to make visually appealing stuff, but it's not that great as like a source of reference, right? So try to look for references that are non-AI related. That's going to be really, really helpful. And that can be like TV shows, or it can be like actual references, right? But try to get close to the source. When it comes to actually setting up like the shells themselves, right? I think there is, with this scene, there's an opportunity to tell more about the person behind the investigation. So what I mean by that is, right now it feels, because it's a white box, right? Like it's a blockout, it feels pretty generic. What you can do with those additional boxes is tell something more about the person who is doing the investigating, right? What I would do is, for example, I'll give you a little bit of a story, right? Is this a cop who's doing this illegally without their boss knowing it? Or is this like a sanctioned investigation, right? Maybe he's not even a cop. Maybe he's a stalker, you know? And like doing this creepy thing where he's doing like a bunch of research about like a girl, potentially a guy that he met online. It can be any sort of things, but even those 3 different stories, they're going to have a different impact on the props that you want to have in your scene, right? So try to think deeper about the story. And that is going to be your anchor for the scene. Small tip for environment arts and also for home interior decoring: if you're going to have stuff on the wall, hang it centered at a person's eye level. In my opinion, the detective board is a little bit too high. That is a good point. Like the lamp framing shows what I mean. Yeah. You would kind of expect it to be lower so that the framing of the light kind of captures the board, right? Yeah, that's a good tip. I like it. Next question. Does the lighting look okay? Would one light source work for the scene, or should I add something else? No, I think one light source can work wonders, right? But again, and I know that I'm going to sound like I'm beating a dead horse here, but think about the story, right? Because you can subconsciously tell a story by the way that you light things as well, right? If we're doing one small light, it feels like this person is just doing it like hush hush, kind of like undercover kind of stuff, right? But if the whole room is kind of lit up, you know, then it's like, oh, this person is doing it out in the open, he has nothing to hide, right? So you can use light to influence what you're trying to tell as a story, right? Yeah, so that's the way that I would approach it. And again, you can kind of see that I'm delegating a lot to you, right? Because that is your opportunity to say, this is my story, and this is what we need to then support the story that I'm trying to tell, right? So even in your Discord thread, right, you say private investigator's office in a house basement. That is not a story, right? That's a location. A location with like a pretty generic kind of person attached to it, right? Try to go deeper. Who are they? Why are they doing this? You know, like what are their motivations? Like all those interesting questions. Like really try to think about the person behind it. And that's going to help you with any sort of set dressing and lighting and all that kind of stuff. So set dressing, lighting is all going to come from your story. Interior decor as eye level, as Dominic said, which is really cool. Like that. So a couple of notes, but yeah, it's only a couple of notes, but I would really advise you to think about the story, right? Really deepen that story, make it something more personal or something more in depth, and really try to get as much as you can out of the story. It's going to be super important for this scene and for any scene that you're going to be doing in the future. I can guarantee that. Thank you, Beauty. Great start on the scene, by the way. I know that we didn't really talk about that, but I like the block out. I like the sense of space that we're getting here. Maybe this is the last thing that I will say. Depending on the story, the proportions of your room might change as well. Right? So, for example, here, the room feels less wide, right? It feels tighter, which then adds like the sense of claustrophobia, the sense of anxiety, or like the sense of like trying to hide something, right? Because they're almost in like a little cupboard and they're like trying to hide what they're doing. Whereas if you have like a more open space, that gives the appearance of, again, they're doing it out in the open, right? It's like a Shang-Chi thing. So again, it's one of those things that you can use the proportions of your space to then influence the story that you're trying to tell. Cool. Thank you, Beauty. Next up, we have Topji. Coleman is saying shot deck references are also good for lighting. Yes. Yes. Jim is saying, hey, first time here, just wanted to say hi. Hello, Jim. Good to have you here. And also Slate is joining. Good to see you too, Slate. Hope you're doing well. God, I got a memory of a sieve. Who was next? Topji. I literally said it out loud. There we go. Ooh, we're getting materials. I like what I see. Let's have a look at the question. Where is it? God, so many people. Ah! There we are. Got it. I wanted to get feedback on my materials base color roughness and height map. I'm aware that some artifacts are there and I'm trying to fix them. Wait. You're asking me... Okay. You're asking me about base color roughness and material like input, but you only give me like material spheres? Come on, dude. Trying to set me up or something? So it's gonna be like a little bit more broad then, right? It's gonna be a little bit broader feedback. What I would say, and you can probably tell this already, right? Is that you have this like section, this like tree trunk that is coming out of it in the height, right? That is like a little bit too noticeable. Where you can probably... What's happening there? Is that like a different texture? Kind of looks like it. But yeah, that's one thing that I immediately see. With this one, I would say be careful with base color variation. Instead of, and this is a general tip that can apply, right? Like try to do, you need more layers for variation. Because especially this just feels like, okay, we're going to do like a tileable mask, and then we're going to do like a recoloring of those tiles, and then that's going to be like the base of the base color, right? I would make this layer like way more subtle, and then add like additional layers and additional grunges and all that kind of stuff on top of it to then get your base color variation out of it that way. That's what I would do. So instead of like trying to get variation out of one layer, I would do multiple layers to get that variation. I do like the moss though. Even though I scribbled all over it, I do like the moss. Moss is looking quite nice. Where's the wood going to be used? Yeah. So it's just like a couple of quick things, right? Like immediately jump out. I think those are like a couple of good things to keep in mind. Totally Magma saying those walls and floor materials definitely need more layering. Looks too raw and clean. The planks and the windows mainly. The planks. Oh, these planks. So not the beams, right? Because that's like a raw, like a rough wood. Where this feels like manufactured wood, almost. Okay, cool. That makes sense. Let's see. For your other question, early version of cinematic with the music. Oh, I don't have the cinematic here. The baby clothes is gonna have a dinosaur. The sippy cup is gonna have dinosaur stickers. I mean, let's have a quick look. But if it's an early version, let me put this on screen. In real life, we might get freaking copyrighted for this. Dang it! That is... So I get that you're trying to show off like a bunch of stuff, right? Ooh. Is that like an inverted normal on like your tiles here? What's happening with that normal? That looks like either really strong or like it might be wrong. Yeah, sounds like it seems like inverted normals. Yeah. So, initial thoughts. I mean, I'd be curious to see how this evolves, right? It's long. It's really long. Usually the general complaint with like cinematics like this is, sure, you might do it for like what would be the best way to say it? Because you just want to do it, right? But I think the frames need to be more impactful, and I want to get like a better understanding of the story, right? Like the immediate story effect. And I think you would probably need to change the sequencing then from being, instead of focusing on the bigger picture first, probably going from like, oh, here's a story and here's where it happens. That would be like my gut reaction. But we'll see. We'll see how this develops over time, but I would definitely think about condensing it way more down. Because yeah. Because there's a whole bunch of explanations here, right? I would definitely, so this would be a good case of actually benchmarking the cinematic, right? Because you're telling me I'm adding a layer so that there's a kid that's obsessed with dinosaurs and the baby clothes are going to have dinosaur designs and there's going to be like best dad dino ever. I want to see that already, because then you can actually change the speed and the framing based on that story that you're trying to do, right? And it can literally just be like color blocking, right? I don't care about how it looks, but it needs to be able to convince me at that stage already before you then put like a whole bunch of time and like resources into it, right? So that could also be for you, right? Like thinking about it in like a very production kind of way. Question number 3 is, when vertex painting, do I mix my moss with the other materials in Designer, or vertex paint the moss with its own tileable is more appropriate? Yeah, keep them separate. Because you don't want to be baking that into your textures and then having that texture as like unique texture on top of like all your surfaces, right? Because that kind of kills the modularity of those textures. If we have everything separate in the engine, we can allow the engine to decide what is going to be handled and be pulled into memory and all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, definitely have vertex painting with like separate tileables, and then set the shader up so that you can paint it on all the surfaces. And yeah, like Magma is saying, also don't just do like green moss, but add some like grime and dirt and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, like dirt for transitions. So your floor and your wall, if you have like a slight dirt, it blends those two surfaces together a bit more. And then you can do the same thing with like assets and all that kind of stuff on top of it, right? But that really helps in like getting rid of like all the sharp corners in your scene. And you can then use the same kind of dirt like under crevices and under hanging ceilings or whatever, right? But yeah, dirt is always a good one. Moss is always is decent, but I think dirt is more flexible, right? Because moss depends on like moisture in the air and all that kind of stuff. Where like dirt, you're just gonna have that everywhere. But yeah, and then wetness as well. I think wetness is a good one too, depending on the type of scene that you make, right? But I think, yeah, you already seem to have like some puddles and all that kind of stuff going on, so yeah, that could be good. Am I going mad? Did we have like a lip around like the fountain before? Did we? Oh, there's a step down. Interesting. Because I don't know why I only noticed it now, but I would always expect to see like a lip around a fountain rather than like a step down. From my travels in Italy, I don't think I've seen like a step down fountain ever. Correct me if I'm wrong though. So yeah, just a tiny thing, but like I would add like a barrier here. I mean, that would like go around like the entire fountain, right? I don't know why we didn't see that until this point, but hey. More moss around the pipes? Yeah, I think that could be awesome, Magma. That could be awesome. Yeah. But yeah, definitely vertex painting. And don't like keep that separate, right? So vertex painting with separate tidables. The fountain definitely feels like a bit basic, though maybe it's still a placeholder. Like the fountain broke, it's not part of the fountain. That's because it's meant to be overflown. Yeah, but even so, I went back to like older versions, right? And what I'm talking about is, let me see. So even here, right? Kind of squish that down here. What I'm specifically talking about is that you have like 2 steps down into the fountain. But usually you don't have like step downs into a fountain, you have like a basin, right, around the fountain. So that's the thing that I'm referring to. And then if you then break that wall open and it's like broken, then a spill would actually make sense, right? Because in your case now, like this spill here doesn't really make sense unless like this part of the this part of the area would be lower down, right? So that the water would run off into that area. Then it would make sense for your water. But then the whole scene wouldn't make sense because you would expect the whole scene to be built so that it waters into the fountain, right? So that all the water pools into the fountain and it like recycles itself or something like that. But yeah, that's what I mean. Cool. Couple things here. Yeah, cool to see all the textures coming in. I think that's coming along nicely. Yeah, make sure to have like proper window frames and all that kind of stuff, right? I know that it's small stuff and it might seem annoying, but that adds so much believability to it. I know that it's like work in progress and all that kind of stuff, but that's why we're here. It's Whip Wednesday. Totally Magma saying, yeah, but even without the spill, it seems odd that the fountain barrier would go down like that. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I was doing circular ones at first, but my mentor felt like they're... Oh, sorry, this is referring to like Rustam. You can make your stairs from the other stone type with a circular pattern. not sure what that's referring to. You can make your stairs from the other stone type with a circular pattern. Oh, so what, just reusing the tileable? No, either way. Let's move on. Cool. Cool. Thank you, Top G. Thank you for sharing the work. It's cool to see it. I think the moss is coming along really nicely. The bricks are in like a really good state as well, apart from like the recognizable pattern, right? I think that's always something to take care of. But I think in general, it looks quite nice. Yeah, I think the stones could definitely use like a lot of work because in the lineup, they feel like the most basic at the moment. So yeah. But yeah, good stuff, man. Keep it up. Keep up the good work. Next up in the list, we have Victoria. Hello, Victoria. Oh, I loved seeing this. Like, I love dragging it in and just being like, oh my god, because it's been such a long time that we've seen this. Loved it. I love seeing this. It looks so nice. Did a fantastic job already. Right. What can I help you with? In the concept, there are some parts quite saturated compared to the real life reference. For example, the ropes on the areas of the paddle. Should I match it to the concept in this case? The ropes. I see. Yeah. I don't think you need to match like the saturation necessarily, right? But I think it would be cool to get a little bit more variation on the ropes. That's about all. Because you have like a lot of really cool variation going into the paddle, right? And in comparison, the rope feels a little bit basic, right? Especially because they're so close together. So having a bit more variation in the ropes would definitely help. When it comes to the saturation, I don't think you need to. I think it's more about like the variation rather than the saturation. Quite saturated. For example, ropes and areas on the paddle. Should I match it to the concept? Yeah. Because I do like the paddle. The paddle is quite nice. And I think you've done like a good blend between like the concept, right? It feels like the concept went like a little bit stronger. Whereas in your case, you were a little bit more deliberate with it, right? So yeah, I think that's a great choice. Doo-doo-doo. Right. Next question. Do you think the composition and the presentation is good, or do I need to add more storytelling elements? I don't want to take the focus away from the boat, but I want to look at more. I want to make it look more appealing, I guess. Yeah, I see what you mean. I don't think the appeal necessarily is like wrong, right? I like what it's doing now. I like that you just like put the focus on the boat, and I think that looks really awesome. And I think any additional work, I would potentially try to add like more storytelling, right? Like the person behind the boat, potentially, if you wanted to go that way. But I don't think you necessarily need to, right? But it would more be like the cherry on top of it, right? So yeah, I think if you want to do anything to the composition or the presentation of it, focusing your time on like a little bit more storytelling, and then potentially in the composition. I honestly wouldn't wouldn't mind removing this little island. For a couple of reasons. I don't really think that it adds too much to the composition, right? I know that you wanted to add like a little bit of like diversity instead of just having like a full plane of water, right? I think it doesn't really add too much there. What I would do if you wanted to have like a component that adds like a little bit more variation to the scene, I would then try to focus on something that is more appropriate for the area that it's going to be in. What I'm imagining is some mangrove kind of trees in the back. That's the first thing that I come up with, right? Like just off the cuff. But that's what I'm imagining in the background. Maybe there's some like pretty good ones that you can get from, I don't know, like a free one out there, you know, just as like a background element. Yeah, just so that we can get something more like appropriate to that area where it's supposed to be, right? Or yeah, like remove or replace. And then maybe something with like mangrove trees or something. It can be anything, right? It can be anything as in where do we see boats like this and what are some of the common elements that we see around boats like this, right? What kind of waterways do they go? Probably not open waters, right? Because that would just be, yeah, that would be suicide on like a small boat like this, right? So we're talking about like small waterways, and then where would they be? And what kind of foliage or like what kind of fauna would we see? So my first guess is like mangrove, but it can be like anything as long as it makes sense in the cohesion of the scene, right? So yeah, that would be my thought, and then potentially like another idea. Okay, a couple of small things. I expect to see like softer shadows here of the tree. Then maybe what I'm thinking about is doing something a little bit more deliberate with like the water lilies. So that maybe we have like this pond here, which is cool. Then we have like one at the back. But then we purposely leave like other spaces a bit more open. Especially around the boat, potentially. This feels like it's being nitpicky. That we give the boat like a little bit of room to breathe, right? So maybe this one as well. Like move it just slightly here so that this becomes like a bigger. Because the way that I see this is I'm almost seeing like the boat being the main focus, and then we have like a bunch of spots next to it, right? Frankie Fresh is saying, I see some nice work come by, guys. Good job. Yeah. People are killing it. Honestly, continuously impressed by like what people are crafting. It's beautiful. Yeah, but that's what I have to say on a composition. Those are my initial thoughts, at least. More deliberate. Lily pad placement. And the last question here is from previous week regarding displacement, whether I need to add it to the buoys, like a rope part. Yeah, these guys, right? I don't think so. Let me quickly look back at what specifically you were asking. From last week. Life happens. If you're talking about like these guys, no. These look just fine. I don't think you need to add like any additional detail to it. They look great, honestly. Yeah. Oh, I edited the question? Oh, okay. but they look great. So nothing to worry about there. Yeah, awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. I would, God, I don't know. Like, I keep thinking that I want to see something where we can see like the water affecting the boat. We would kind of have to have something where it like bounces off of the water and then it like creates like a rim, like a shimmer on the boat or something. Oh, but that could be. This is more like an open-ended suggestion, right? But like some shimmer on the boat. Like it's almost like I'm imagining the sun reflecting off the water, like then showcasing the roughness of the boat. That's what I'm thinking specifically. And that kind of depends on the angle of the sun and all that kind of stuff, right? But it could be really cool to have that sort of, yeah, that sort of bounce light, just really highlighting like the roughness, like the basically the wetness of like the boat at the bottom. Ripples, not necessarily. I don't think you need to go that far, right? Because the boat is static and it's kind of just like, yeah, it's very static, right? A fish, potentially, I think that's more optional, right? That's more like, that is one of those things where if you find like a fish for free on the marketplace, I would then throw it in, right? To kind of add like a little bit more context to the scene. But apart from that, I wouldn't do it. Right. Cool. Thank you so much, Victoria. This is looking awesome. Yeah, great stuff. Love to see it. Love to see it. So glad you're back on this. And for the final stretch, it feels you're getting really, really close. It's like a bit more polish, and we're good to go. Next up is Cameron Eddy. Awesome, thanks. No worries, no worries. So Cameron. Cool, yeah, so these were more like technical questions, right? So you were asking about the edge decal, do I need a mask? And we're gonna have to zoom in for this. Yes, you will need to have a mask, right? Like you need to have like some sort of fade there. I will say that it depends on what kind of decal you want to have, right? If you want to have like a decal that also has like base color, normal, and all that kind of stuff, you will need to have a mask. If you just have a normal decal, right, that doesn't influence the base color and all that kind of stuff, you could technically do it without a mask. But I'm assuming that you want to have like a slightly different coloration for the base color and all that kind of stuff. Oh, just normal, I think. Interesting. Okay. Because the way that I thought you were going to be using this is that usually if you have chipped edges of like any kind of rock, right, it has a lighter color than the rest of it. And it also helps in like making it stand out a bit more. But honestly, that's up to you. That's why I'm saying if you have like a normal map, usually you don't need to be bothered by it, right? Because the normal of, well, the normal should match a flat normal, right? But yeah, you do need a mask in that case. So yeah, base color, roughness, or normal. Well, base color, roughness is mask. Only normal is no mask, really. It can always help. And then how to create a mask from a normal. So what you can do is you can. It's been a while since I had to do this myself, but usually I have like a stack of filters that I use for this. The general gist of this is whenever you have a normal, this depends on how you're baking it though. So if you have a normal and you only care about like the interior faces, right? Like the broken up stuff, you can then bake it with opacity in mind, and then you can basically just flood fill it with white, and then you have like your mask, right? If you do it that way. But honestly, for something like this, it's just so easy to do. Just take it into Photoshop, go around it with like a quick mask, feather the mask, and then you're done. Sometimes it's really nice to be fancy, but it's also like really slow. So Photoshop, selection. This can be like a really rough selection, right? Because you don't need to be like pixel perfect. You can just like go around like the main shape and have like a little bit of like a transition between your cracks and the actual surface material, right? And then just let it fade out. But yeah, there are ways to do it like automatically, right? Where you can take your baked information, you can then flood fill the entire texture, flood fill with white, give it a black background, and then you're done, right? That could also be like a way to do it. But yeah, really cool scene though. That's control concept art, right? I'm assuming it is. Does the damage look readable enough from that distance? No. It doesn't look readable from that distance because especially this is like in the center of the scene, right? I would definitely like scale it up just a little bit more because think about this, right? Like in games, we tend to exaggerate everything. So even if we scale this up by like 50%, if we put it on like a pillar like this, it's going to give it like a little bit of a nice effect. But one tip that I'll give is here. You always need to look at your scene in like full picture. And if the damage is like still readable to what you want, then that's what you should be aiming for, right? But like I honestly, at first glance, I didn't even notice there was damage on these pillars because I was just focused on the main pillar. Depends on a bunch of circumstances, right? Like the angle of the light and the intensity of your textures and all that kind of stuff still, right? But I would make it a bit bigger to have it a bit more in your face. Awesome. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you for the questions. Quick one. Looks more like a bevel from the side distance. From this distance. Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does. And that's the thing, right? Like with everything like that, if you do it very subtle, then the perception of the viewer or the player will easily go into, oh, it's an accident rather than intentional, right? So that's where we exaggerate some stuff because then it looks very intentional. For example, if you rotate something but like 1 or 2 degrees, it looks like an accident. Make it 5 degrees, it looks on purpose. That's like a stupid example, right? But that can happen on your textures, on the bevels that you create, the size of certain things. Like, it can happen on a lot of factors. Cool. Let's go to the next person then. I think we are probably gonna have to cut this session short and then maybe pick back up on like Sunday, Friday or something like that. Because yeah, there's a lot of people to go through. I don't think we're gonna get through this comfortably. Wait, who are we looking at? Where's all the hands up? I am just going crazy. Oh, there we go. Next one is Abhishek. Cool. Abhishek is on screen already. Caveat to this one, Abhishek. I am not a prop artist, so take that into account. I am an environment artist first. So I will take my feedback with a grain of salt. So I'm going to keep it like pretty high level on purpose. Let's see. Where is your entry? I want to know how the overall asset looks and how I can improve the overall quality of the asset. The one thing that I usually go to when it comes to like improving texture quality, right? I always go to thinking about things logically and contextually. So what that means is think about like how people would be interacting with a prop like this, right? If I hold it, where are things going to interact with my hands, with each other? If I'm going to clean it, where are the cleanest spots going to be? Where's the dirtiest spots going to be? That kind of stuff, right? An example is here. So on the lenses are like pretty generic when it comes to their dirtiness, right? I would expect that like the edges are like way dirtier than like the main surface, right? So there's going to be a stronger contrast between the front of the lens, which is probably being cleaned off at least multiple times, and then the dirt kind of gathers in the crevices, right? But this sort of thinking, you can then drive that to like any surface that you have, right? Because for example, if you think about things logically, right? It is really easy to clean like a flat surface like this, right? But it's really hard to clean like a surface like this underneath here, right? And especially to get into the crevice. So that's where I would focus like a lot of the grime and the dirt. And then the open areas I would keep like way cleaner, like as clean as you have them now, and then I would drive the dirt up into other areas. Because right now, it kind of feels like it's pretty generic, right? If you look at this specific angle, it feels like there's no difference between like something that is like really difficult to clean and really easy to clean. So that's usually what I focus on. So it's like a very logic-based approach, right? How easy or how hard it is to clean. Then another thing that I would say is, again, thinking about interaction, right? If you are interacting with this prop, if you're taking pictures, where are you going to be interacting with it, right? That means that there's probably going to be like a whole bunch of like at least like oil of or discoloration or some of that stuff happening here, because this is a lever that is going to be like rotating, right? This is going to be rotating constantly because you're winding up the camera, right? Which I assume that's the case here. So that means that your hands are constantly going to be touching the side of the frame, right? So that needs to be indicated through the textures, right? And again, think about that stuff. Think about what I just did here. See that as an exercise to do that with the whole prop, right? So all these dials to the side, for example, they're probably going to be more worn and more oily and all that kind of stuff compared to other surfaces, right? And again, crevices here. So yeah, I would think about that. Think about it in a very logical way. And then you wanted some feedback on your overall renders to how good or bad they are looking. Yeah, I think overall they look like really good, right? They look like really, really good. You got a really, really strong base when it comes to the renders. I would, again, and this is where the beauty is going to happen with what I just said, right? Like thinking about the dirt and the roughness variation in like a very logical way, that is automatically going to push the contrast in your textures. And that contrast is then something that we can use in our renders to then highlight those things, right? Because right now, it feels like a lot of the metals, they just kind of blend together. There's no variation in the metals. What I would love to see is a stronger contrast between cleaner and dirtier areas so that we can then highlight those like nice roughness variations, right? Because that's one thing that I don't really like about the renders is that they kind of feel dull. They kind of feel the prop itself is really, really interesting, but the lighting and the way that it's presented feels like it can really be improved by like adding a bit more contrast, a little bit more excitement to it. Where this feels, yeah. Yeah, it just feels like we can highlight some of those like really nice spots. For example, if you focus on like an individual angle here, you're already doing this, right? So you're already highlighting the lens. Right, so we have this beautiful highlight that is happening. How can we make that highlight more interesting, right? Like, can we break that up? And can we like have like a broken up highlight here going into like a really sharp highlight to indicate like how dirty or clean it is, right? Really play around with the interplay of your lighting and how that affects the highlights and the roughness coming together. So that's what I would focus on. Because the presentation itself is decent, right? Like with a couple of tweaks with the lighting that come from trying to highlight some interesting stuff about your prop. I think we're on to a winner here. Yeah. Cool stuff, Abhishek. But yeah, great stuff on the prop itself though. Like really nicely done. Really nicely UV unwrapped as well. Nicely optimized. If there's one thing that I could potentially say is that if you go for close-up details, most of the shapes are like really nice and round. Where was I looking? But you can kind of see, maybe it was because, yeah, you can kind of see some of the geometry that's happening here on the main lenses. So that might actually be a spot where you can add like slightly more geometry. But yeah, that's all I'll have to say about this. Yeah, good stuff. Really nice looking prop. Yeah, and keep pushing it further. Curious to see. Right. Next person is Senkai. And then we have Swan. Thank you so much. No worries. No worries. Thank you for sharing your work. See, brain like a sieve. Oh my god. Where do we go? Senkai. Senkai is next. There we go. I've not made any annotations for this just yet, so let's have a look. Where are we? Is the floor lacking geo? And do you think the current texture looks well in the scene? Oh. What? I am surprised. If that is your texture, if that is what you expect to see on the floor, that's not the whole thing though, right? Because this still feels like full, like really flat. It's probably this section here. Yeah, if you're gonna do like heavy destruction, you might want to add like geo, right? So for example, there's a certain point where the shapes get too big where the normal map can't really carry the sort of deformation that we're trying to do, right? And an example of this is like this section here, right? So if we have like this section here where you have like this big lip, you can't really carry that with like normal alone, right? So that's an area where I would definitely cut in like a little bit of geometry and like try to warp it against it, because that is just not going to cut it here, right? You can kind of see that. I think I can see a split near the middle. Yeah, you can kind of see it here, right? Yeah. Yeah, this is an interesting one because you would almost want to have the same sort of texture, because now the transition from like really flat to like 3D is really visible, right? And I think that's a good thing to point out, because that almost means that we take this texture, we take this sculpt, and we make a less aggressive version of it, and then we bake that down to then make the tileable for the rest of the floor, right? That's what I would do. We got a little bit of track already, but let's see. But yeah, I do like the texture of it by itself, though. I think with a bit of extra geo, I think this is going to look really nice. Yeah, the broken floor definitely needs like a little bit of geo. A little bit more. Would you recommend to just decimate or do manual? Like converting this to a 3D mesh, right? I would not do retopologizing yourself, honestly. You can just decimate it. And I think if you want to showcase your retopology skills, then pick something. Well, no, you actually have like this bookcase already, right? Where you showcase your retopology skills. I would just keep it to that. Use that as an example in your breakdowns. And then if you just decimate like some other stuff in your scene, that's fine. No one's going to care about that. Because the way to think about it is that if you... on your portfolio, you have checkboxes, right? So if I want to know if you can retopologize, I don't really want to see like every single thing in your scene retopologize, because that kind of defeats the point. I would pick the most complex thing that you've made in the scene and retopologize that, because then I can be like, okay, this is the most complex thing in the scene, completely apologize. I don't really have like anything to say there. Then that's fine, right? I would always think in those terms, that if you can showcase that you do a workflow well, and yeah, you showcase it in a breakdown with like a complex example, anything that is like simpler than that, I'm going to make the assumption that you can also do that, because the most complex thing is usually the complex thing to work on, right? So anything simpler, you can kind of make like a... you can probably take like shortcuts and stuff too. Be like a little bit more sensible about like building a portfolio. Question 2. Do you think vertex paint is needed for adding some variation, considering dirt and all the damage you can add it through the asset's unique textures? Well, here's the weird thing though. You're doing this as like a unique texture, right? Which is not really the way that I would go about it. I would have 2 titleables, one broken up version and one flatter version. And then I would probably, the way that I would do it now is I would then use the height map for my broken version, use that to displace some of the geometry on my titleable on like a certain section, right? Have that as like a unique mesh. And then have that in the scene. So what I mean by that, if we do like a little overpaint here, is we know that the most destroyed area is going to be around here, right? So instead of doing the whole titleable, the way that I would do that is I would... okay, let's see. It's going to be destroyed. That's going to be destroyed. I think the rest is fine. Just as an example, right? Mm-hmm. Not 100% accurate, but I hope you get my point already. That it makes sense. So we have your titleable, which is basically everything that's not included in that mesh, right? That's your titleable. And then everything inside of this mesh is going to be a unique mesh, right? When I say unique, what I mean by that is that it is still going to use the same titleable information. But I would... sorry, let's finish up the notes here before I go into a rant. So that would be unique, right? It's still going to use the same titleable. What I would do then is I would, like I said, use the height map of the titleable to display some of the geometry, decimate it down to like a reasonable topology, and that gives me that gives me geometry to play with without having to model it myself, right? Because I just saw the way that you went about it, and this is the way that you modeled that plane, right? There's technically nothing wrong with this, by the way, right? There's technically nothing wrong with this, but this approach fails to capture like all the intricacies of all the cool sculpting detail that you've done, right? That's why I prefer doing it this way. The only thing that we need to keep into account there is that we find a way to still optimize between the dense topology and the modular stuff. My previous mentor was keen on me trying to make things modular tileable assets instead of trims and tileable materials, but I understand what you mean. Wait, so my previous mentor was keen on me trying to make modular tileable assets instead of trims and tileable materials, but I understand what you mean. That's interesting. I think they can work hand in hand really beautifully. Right? Because if you say make modular tileable assets, that is also not really what I'm seeing here, right? The downside of modular tileable assets is that they're not really tileable because you lose all the flexibility with it, right? Let me explain what I mean. With a flat surface, a flat tileable, the benefit of having that is that you get a lot of flexibility with vertex painting, decals, and all that kind of stuff on top of it, right? Especially vertex painting. When you have a set geometry, that limits your flexibility, right? So that means that you've made this unique tile, and then if you add this tile, let's say you add the same tile here, that's going to be repeating already, and we can't use it, right? So there's technically nothing modular about it. Unless we try to figure out a way to make it more usable. That might mean that if we were to break up the individual planks into the individual assets and then reconstruct the floor out of it that way, then it becomes modular again, right? Because I can shape the individual planks to make whatever floor that I want, and that gives me my modularity back. But I think that's why I prefer this approach, because it's kind of like, hey, I am being very deliberate and very cost saving with the majority of my floor is going to be tileables, right? And then where I need details, I am going to cut around the tileable and then project or like add details by like doing the stuff that I said, right? So going back to what you can do, right? There's certainly nothing wrong with what you did. We're just going to take like one step extra, and instead of you manually well, actually, you can still use the geometry and then do a displacement on top of it using the height map that you have from this texture, right? And that can actually give you like a really nice result. So yeah, give that a try. But yeah, then adding vertex painting on top of that. Vertex painting is gonna be, I think, can be useful. You know, if you want to do like generic dirt or anything like that on top of it, yes. But any other damages? Oh no, considering dirt and other damages can be added through the asset's unique texture. Yeah, that's where we got onto this topic, right? I would not see this as a unique texture. I would see it as a unique mesh that is making use of a tileable that's already there, right? So that means that we need to add dirt and, I don't know, any other layers through vertex painting. That's what I would do. Cool. Little rant, little ramble. But yeah. Vertex painting can definitely be used. Using displacement. And then we can add vertex painting on top of it to add more uniqueness to it. Oh, YouTube is complaining, but I think we're still live. At least I can't really see anything. Okay, we'll go and give it a try. Got to be confusing your suggestions, but I'll rewatch and figure it out. Yeah, I went through it really quickly. There is a page in the Environment Art Handbook that mentions this workflow, using a tileable to then displace the geometry around it. If we can give you like a quick look. Ooh. Tips and tricks. Let's have a look. Landscape displacement. Height map to geometry. Let's have a look. So, this is, for example, the way that I did my rooftops, right? Like an example for like how you can do something like this. Where you can tell that I used like a tileable texture, then displace a geometry on top of it, where, God, chat is in the way. Let me just scoot this over really quick. So you can see that this is a flat texture, and then I use the height map of that texture to actually, with this modifier stack that I have here, basically just displacing the geometry based on the height, and then just crunching it down to like a reasonable amount of geometry again that you can see here. So we went from like 500,000 triangles to like 6,000 triangles, and then that becomes like your final mesh, right? That can be done here as well, with that specific section of your floor. I should actually use the handbook more, now that I got it all set up. Does the send to Unreal add-on still work in the handbook? I'm having Python error in Blender 5.5.0. That might be whenever you're on the latest, you have to wait for the add-on to like be updated by the owner. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not on latest. That's the reason why I'm never on latest with Blender or like with any project, with any program ever, because stuff breaks. Cool. Thank you, Sinkai. I think we're not going to get through everyone today. There's still so many people left. Oh my God. I'm going to have to do this in text or in video tomorrow. So we're going to do 3 more. And we're going to go through them pretty quickly. And then we're going to have to say bye-bye for tonight because it's getting pretty late already. Did we miss someone in the row? So we got Swan. Swan is next. So we'll do Swan, we'll do Fair, and then we'll do Yachis. Cool. First one is Swan. Let's have a look. You've done it in Blender, not inside of Unreal. Interesting. Yeah. You can do that. It just depends on where you need the flexibility, right? So you can do this with nanite displacement, right? Can I queue up now? Yeah, sure. I can put you in with like the last person. So we'll do Swan, Fair, and then McVal in that case. But yeah, let's see. Swan. Let's start with you, buddy. Let's have a look here. Swan, where are you in the list? It's been a while. I'm working steadily on this diorama during a mentorship. I'd love to have some feedback regarding the texturing, especially the rocks. Are they readable or too muddy and too noisy? Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think... I think all the colors are so similar that it's really hard to distinguish them from each other. That's what I would say. That is my gut feeling here, because the transition between like what is supposed to be dirt and mud down here, right? It kind of just flows into the rocks. So I would definitely push the material separation. But the actual shapes and the texturing of it looks like pretty cool. It is just like in terms of like, it's too similar to the ground. And I think what can help is to have a blend, right? Like do it with vertex paint or however you want to do it with the mud, and then really push the differences between the stone and the mud, right? So there's like the mud, a transition, and then the stone itself, right? So it's like you go from like your main shape, transition, and then the other shape. It was like a 1, 2, 3 step. But yeah, when it comes to the actual read, I do really like him. But I think you've done a good job on those, dude. They look nice. Cool. Second, for context, one of our constraints was that we were only allowed 2 texture maps, so I couldn't crank out the highest textile density on everything. That's fine. You don't need like a high textile density to make shit look really cool, you know? Yeah. Okay, that was it. Yeah, yeah, good stuff. Good stuff, Swan. I really like the attention to details compared to your previous work. Really focusing on something super small and making it higher quality. Again, I keep saying this to everyone. God, it works. It works like a charm, right? Because you can spend more time on actually focusing on the details and really fine-tuning everything. It looks really nice. So, great stuff, man. Great stuff. Right, and then we have Fair next. Imagine overscoping. Yeah, imagine, McVal. I never do this. Yeah, it was much more fun doing a small piece. Oh yeah, 100%. 100%, because you get to focus on the details. And the thing is, that's what for your portfolio everyone cares about, you know? Scale is impressive, sure, but if that scale comes at the cost of quality, that's still gonna cost you in terms of like being talked to by like an employer, you know? Because especially in working for AAA, it's the quality that they want to see, right? So always keep that in mind. Hello, Fair. Good to see you. You had a question about your laundry. Interesting. I'm not too good at laundry myself, so we'll see what we get. I think I like the pants and the red cloth, but the other two feel very stiff and fake. Okay. This is interesting. I had the opposite feel. Because I like the way that this is kind of warping, right? You kind of have like the very subtle like normal effect on it, which is like really nicely done. And then the pants, I think the angle that it's at also doesn't help. Because I'm expecting the pants to be like draping down like this, right? But it's sticking straight down. So I think what you could do, and this would be like a really quick fix, is just like grab like the bottom vertices of these guys and just move them to the left. And then you're probably going to get like a crinkle in here somewhere, right? You kind of want to have, it goes up, it goes over, and then it kind of can fold around like a little bit, and then it can kind of come straight down or something, you know? But for these things, soft selection is your friend, honestly. Yeah. Also making a difference between the bits of fabric, right? Like this can be like a really light piece of cloth. And if this is like a denser cloth, you would probably see like the bend being like a bit bigger, you know? Then kind of folding over a little bit more. Yeah, it's just about like exaggerating the curves a little bit more, right? And then you can also do the same thing here if you wanted to, right? Like if you really wanted to get like a bit complex about it, you could almost say like let's see, how does this look? So let's say there's like a little overlap in the cloth. Right, so almost imagine the cloth like kind of draped over each other. And then you could have like something more interesting happen with like just the two layers of cloth like kind of interacting with each other. Yeah, I mean, you can... The only thing is, like, you can make it more expressive if you wanted to, right? But it just... You need to find... You almost need to find an excuse on how to do it. You know, like how to do it logically. That's why I'm thinking about, like, folding, or, like, that it's not, like... You know, like, you almost throw, like, your clothes on the washing line from a distance, and then you get, like, that natural folding that happens. I need to resculpt it, I guess. Not necessarily. But I think that could definitely help in terms of like the style that you have. What I would do, and this might be fun, depending on your inclination with technical stuff. But I love simulating stuff. So I would just take like almost export like this rope, and then take your piece of fabric and then just like simulate it on top of the washing line and see what it does. See what it like naturally like just collides with itself. You did that. Yeah. All simulated. Makes a lot of sense. I think if you want to get like more expressive ways of simulation, we then need to put stuff in the way, right? So instead of using like a nice piece of cloth, we then like we take a little bit of soft selection and we let me see if I can make sense of this, right? So let's say as like a little simulation, what we're doing here, this is our rope, and then this is like the piece of cloth that you sim on top of it, right? Which makes sense. What I would do is I would almost do something like this, where you take your original piece of cloth and then you say, what would that look like? I would then almost make it so that it like folds in onto itself almost. And then drop it down onto the clothesline. And then see what it does with itself, right? And that might give you like a more interesting result than just having like a straight piece on there. Yeah. That's what I would do. Like, almost, yeah, instead of like the basic shape, like put stuff in the way and like make it a bit more expressive when it comes to it. But also, and this is an important message to all of you. You're spending a whole lot of time, and I don't know if you saw this one coming or not, but we're spending a whole bunch of time Did you see what I did? Did you see what I drew? That's where we're spending most of our time. Sometimes it's a good reminder to zoom out and see the impact of like the work that we're doing, right? Don't worry, I do this a lot myself as well. I just love to get carried away into like these really interesting like small technical challenges where I just get carried away a little bit, and then I zoom out and I'm like, okay, I just spent like a couple of days doing that. You know? So it is good to put it in perspective. Because what you scale them up. Yeah. It's not a house anymore. It's just a giant pants with like a house in it, you know? That's what we're dealing with now. Yeah, it's a good reminder, you know. But it is fun to keep busy with that though. However, what you could do, you know, like at the end when you have like your detail shots and you're like, I still feel like these like pieces of cloth are like a bit too stiff. then go in and like maybe, okay, to take this to the next level, I would need to sculpt them, for example, right? And then you can take a little bit of time to sculpt them and make the detail shots like really, really look nice. That gives you probably the most control, right? Cool. Hope it was helpful. A little bit of perspective in the mix. I did do some prep here. What else did we do here? Yeah, I think we're gonna talk about Mekval's work, and then we're gonna do the rest of the people. I'm probably just gonna do it like in text, like over the next day. Apologies for that, but yeah, it's getting pretty late. It's also getting still pretty hectic this week. Or maybe we'll do it on Friday. I'm not sure. But I will definitely get feedback this week, though. Thanks, Tim. No worries. I don't know if you had that icon before already, by the way, Fair, but I like it. Just as a side note. Cool. Mekval. Let's see. Last one for today, then. Before I take a little bit chill. Maybe just go to sleep or something. Oh my god. Wouldn't that be nice? Where is your work? I keep scrolling past it. There it is. New icon indeed. Yes, I love it. So, question from Mekval. How do the rock and the cliffs read in the scene overall? I've added some color variation to the texture as well. I think they look really, really nice. Maybe not convinced about the amount of like moss that's growing on them, but I do really like the rocks. I like them a lot. Yeah. I do like them a lot. They look really, really nice. Bit of a technical question about moss. Oh, okay. Currently using PCG just scattered on the meshes. Was wondering if it's too heavy performance-wise, if I should use a texture primarily instead. It's definitely going to be a combination, right? Like for moss like this, at this small scale, in an actual production environment, you will have to cut it out like almost immediately. Or you have to do like some shader trickery or something like that, right? But this is really, really expensive. So what I would always do is I would always rely on the majority texture first, and then for specific spots where you want to add additional detail, then rely on meshes. That's the way that I would do it. It probably comes down to like any piece of foliage, right? I'll explain that in just a second. So, texture first, and then additional detail meshes where needed. So what I was saying about like foliage in general, the same can be applied to grass as well. If you don't have like a grass texture on your landscape, and then you start adding grass on top of it, you need to add way more grass than you ever would if you had a base texture, right? And I think the magic happens is when they like blend seamlessly together, so that at a certain distance you can actually call out most of the grass, and you can't even notice that it transitions into a base texture, which is really nice. That's the dream, right? So the same thing needs to happen here as well, where if the camera is really up close, you would see like a lot of moss and all that kind of stuff, and then at a certain point you would just like cut it out completely because it's all just texture. And in your case, right, because you always have like you've always been like more technically aligned, this sort of stuff could actually be really, really cool to showcase in your portfolio, where you showcase that you kept performance in mind to this degree, right? Yeah. Colors. I was supposed to write rocks here. Yeah. Rocks are great. I don't know if you're still working on the rocks. I mean, you're doing rocks and cliffs, right? So I'm assuming that there's going to be like more rocks. But yeah, this stuff is going to be really cool if we have like, you know, smaller rocks and little pebbles and all that kind of stuff coming in. Oh my god, dude, this is going to look so good. Because that really breaks up like these bigger surfaces, right? Where we just have like a couple of areas where we add like a couple of chunky smaller rocks, a couple of pebbles. Oh, so good. And I also don't know what you're doing here with the road. I mean, it's early on, right? But I would, man, I see like a beautiful opportunity here to have like a nice curvy. Nice curvy road. And this is probably going to go underneath it as well. Oh, it's going to look so good. I like it. Like it. So medium and small rocks. Need to be added. But yeah, overall, really good work, man. It's looking really nice. Yeah, the work is paying off, dude. Wandering of the Waterfall. So kind of whip, but just initially. Oh, this is going to be one of those like heavy particle waterfalls, right? I'm making an assumption here, which is dangerous, but let me have a look. Yeah. Okay. Let me give everyone a sneak peek at this. I've never been a fan of these waterfalls. The reason is like you need so much like particles or like so many interactive particles that at that point like it kind of becomes crazy performance wise, right? I would always think about doing, because especially because the water that you have up here feels like it should actually be like a pretty substantial waterfall. But then what we're seeing in the actual waterfall kind of doesn't correlate to like the main thing, right? Which is pretty weird. There's like a disconnect happening between the two. So I would use these particles as a way to add on top of your actual core mesh waterfall. Yeah, that would be like my gist. But I do like the shader of it though. Like the shader of it like looks quite nice. And the shader can potentially be reused on like the main waterfall if you're going to do a mesh as well, right? So that stuff is really cool. I like it. But it's just, I don't know. I just from an artistic perspective, yeah, I don't like the look of it. Whoops. It's just the Unreal Engine waterfall water plugin with Niagara on top. The Unreal Engine water plugin with Niagara on top. Wait, so is there actually like a core waterfall there too? No, right? It's just the particles, right? Because yeah. Oh, is there like a mesh there as well? Is that blue outline a mesh? Ooh, because if so, it's hard to see with the current light. Oh, so it is a mesh. Okay, yeah, we definitely need to change that then. Yeah, because that doesn't read like one at all. And that becomes, like you said, like an issue with like the lighting and making sure that it looks nice and that the shader kind of looks like okay in like other lighting conditions. Because I didn't even realize that there was a mesh. Right. Also, the mesh plus particles need to match up, right? More obviously my previous slide. Yeah. So if your particles are going to do this, then your waterfall should follow the same line, right? It can't follow the shape of the rocks. That means that if you want to have like a really nice organic waterfall, then you're probably going to have to assume that like, oh, this is a plateau. Let's say there's a plateau here. The waterfall is going to come down. It's going to hit the plateau. It's going to bounce off of it. Then you're probably going to need like additional particle effects here too, right? And you can't really rely on like the GPU particles to do that for you. I think that's what I would do. But yeah, it's fun to play around with it. But yeah, McFarlane, good stuff. Good stuff. I like it. Might keep it as is for now and cut it if I don't feel like doing it. That might be the safest option. What might also be a good option is just reducing the particles and just making it feel like it's like a really small waterfall, or maybe it's just like it's like a misty waterfall or something like that. Those are usually like a bit easier, you know? Because like as soon as you add fog and mist and all that kind of stuff, it hides a lot of stuff too, right? Yeah. Like the waterfall here, yeah, potentially. That's like a that's like a bad boy though. That thing runs fast. Yeah, these things are like really, really hard to do. I think what I would then do is if you wanted to have like something like this, I would then have it like evaporate even more. Yeah. Waterfalls are hard, dude. Jamie Dollar is saying Tyler Smith did a good waterfall tutorial on ArtStation. Worth the £8, in my opinion. Oh, interesting. Okay. Thank you for the shout out. Tyler Smith is a beast though, so yeah. I can imagine. Cool. Thank you, McVal. Appreciate it. Right. As I said before, I don't have enough time to go through everyone's work today. Apologies for that. I will do a text write-up with like some of my thoughts, and I will share that with you in the community chat as well. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to cut it short here because it's been a long day. But expect this to be done maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday, but you'll see more more feedback pop up in the community chat. So yeah, I'm not gonna make it any longer than it needs to be. I just am gonna shout out everyone that was here to the end. I appreciate your support so much. I'm really excited about the team challenge that are coming up. Yeah, I'm hyped for it. I'm looking forward to the kickoff this weekend. If you want to be there, join the community, all that good stuff, go check us out. And with that, I wish you all a nice evening. And yeah, see you on Friday for the next stream. Bye-bye.